Welcome to Evolved Sun. I'm Matt Finch, your host, and in today's episode, I'm going to be reading from Scott Mandelker, Ph.D.'s essay called Loving Truth. Dr. Mandelker has been teaching the law of one and raw material, as well as Buddhism, Taoism, transpersonal psychology, and Western metaphysics for decades, and I have learned a lot from his playlists on the law of one, on wanderers and the raw material, the near-death experience of Howard Storm, Buddhism, karma, and much more. Dr. Mandelker is a very articulate and intelligent writer and speaker and counselor, and even though this episode probably won't get that many views because it's not on a popular keyword topic, this is just a dedication to people that love truth. So if even one person gets value out of this, then it was worth me reading it and recording it and uploading it. This essay by Dr. Mandelker, Loving Truth, was written in 2010, although everything that was written then is even more so true today than it was then. And thus, without further ado, let's get right into it. Loving Truth. The other night in bed before entering sleep, I wondered why some people are willing to face bitter truths while others keep their head in the sand and cling to false notions. Likewise, for the individual, why is it we sometimes long for truth, while other times we simply close our ears? Aside from the fact that 3D mind is veiled, why is it so difficult for people to receive greater truth? Specifically, I thought about two areas. 1. The hidden evil of human leaders, and 2. The hidden glory of true self and cosmic life. These are equally important themes, related to the reality of vast global suffering, injustice, warfare and deceit, and the reality of universal family, higher dimensions in soul, the infinite love of creation as it is. Seeing only life's surface level, given by the physical five senses and intellect, and rejecting the invisible is a tendency very much connected to trusting human authority and believing their words. In America, some people still believe in Obama's goodness, believing he's a good man here to save us from the evil Republicans. Others are convinced he's a puppet of negative forces himself, tasked with the job of destroying America. Some people believe traditional churches, public schools, and national government are honest and true, while others see them as tools of brainwashing and subtle mind control. Some people imagine life ends with physical death, and God is a jealous old man who punishes those who don't follow church regulations. They also believe there's no such thing as soul or higher dimensions, and the totality of life is what we see and hear, no more. While some people seek within for spiritual guidance, most humans seek guidance by human leaders, whom they feel know more than they do. There are enormous differences in understanding in this world. To me, it's amazing how many conflicting opinions we have. Since I've never quite believed myself fully part of this insanity, as Ross said about wanderers who have trouble fitting in society, it's never been hard for me to question human authority. From a young age, I distrusted their authority and sensed deception and ignorance in many of those in positions of power, in school, religion, government, society, and family. Of course, this made it easier for me to delve deep into spiritual studies and meditation, seeking to validate their ideas by inner seeking alone. Of course, there's no guarantee that truths revealed by inner seeking and reflection are any truer than those told by a priest, president, school principal, or media reporter. In the end, our knowing of truth depends on our own spiritual maturity and loving the light. Like most teachers and speakers, my purpose has been to share what I consider genuine truth. For the past 15 years, my main teaching has been based on the raw material, Law of One books, because in my view, it is the purest expression of cosmic reality from higher self available. Our true self or essential being stands outside time and space, and knows the roadmap to full enlightenment and reunified awareness, the view that Ra offers. I've supplemented their information with Western metaphysics, Buddhism and Hinduism, Taoism and psychology. I consider these teachings essential because the more they are used, the greater the transformation of mind-spirit produced. Actually, this is an excellent way to judge the relevance and depth of any spiritual teaching. By repeated study and practice, does it lead to greater expansion of awareness, understanding, fulfillment, and ability to serve others? Many times I've been asked, why do you think Ra is so important? How do you know it is true? Often I reply, well, how do you know anything is true? Meaning, how do we ever know what is true, real, or important? How do you know you won't be punished if you don't take Jesus to be your personal savior? How do you know soul and reincarnation, karma, and higher dimensions are real, and not merely hopeful fantasy? How do you know you are anything more than a bag of bones and biochemicals? And for that matter, how do you know any particular human leader is telling the truth and not just a clever liar? How do you know what is true and what is a lie? From my perspective today, after years of teaching and answering questions related to a host of channels, religions, New Age leaders, and writers, I'm left with a simple conclusion. Most people really don't know what's true. I am not implying I know anything more than you, but I do understand the maturity, accuracy, and congruence to reality of the sources on which I depend. Most spiritual seekers, unfortunately, don't realize there are levels of understanding, consciousness, and spiritual maturity, and therefore greater and lesser degrees of wisdom and power in various teachings. In the end, we return to the question, just how much do you love truth? Do you really love truth, or are you just curious? Do you love it enough to rebuild your understanding to conform to a reality that doesn't fit your current beliefs and doesn't feel 120% happy? Do you love truth enough to continue seeking even when it hurts, when it reveals aspects of yourself or human society or the universe that are shocking, complex, and disturbing, or humbling, glorious, and amazing, or even when truth is far beyond human mind itself? Just how much do we love truth? It's a good question to ask ourselves, I think. I wrote about this in a chapter of my book Universal Vision entitled, Why Are They Laughing? I asked, why do they laugh when I talk of wanderers, walk-ins, and ET souls coming to Earth in service from higher dimensions? Why don't they just question me further, or calmly say they don't know, and give the ideas a fair hearing? Why laugh, instead of peacefully listening, considering, and reflecting on those strange ideas? Fortunately, I also answered my own questions in that chapter. I concluded they laugh because they're afraid, they're humbled, threatened, and somewhat ashamed to consider reality so much greater than they imagined. They don't feel safe admitting their beliefs could be wrong, limited, small, or totally mistaken. Those mocking radio interviewers simply didn't want to admit or even consider their ignorance. And they certainly do not love truth. I am not blaming them, but it's another truth we shouldn't fear, that most humans in positions of authority and leadership are quite conceited and small-minded. In fact, it is very, very important for wanderers awakening to disengage, disconnect, and detach from consensus social beliefs about life and death, world and cosmos, good and evil, and the trustworthiness of human leadership. To fully move into power, we must reject all false beliefs and limited understanding, whether it comes from priests or presidents, channels or gurus, teachers or parents. We must learn to recognize truth by ourselves and to know for ourselves what is true and real, not simply swallow what we're fed. This process of developing critical thought, self-reflection, and self-validation is today more important than ever, as the volume of information given to us grows and grows. But the main point is this: how well we learn depends on the strength of our desire to learn. All we realize and finally know, the degree to which we expand awareness, energy, and essential qualities of consciousness, all depends on our willingness to enter the unknown. There is a necessary breaking down, shattering, and deconstruction of old patterns to allow rebuilding of a new vision of reality, a more expanded and detailed conceptual map, a more mature knowing reality, which then becomes a platform for further growth. There's an unspoken fact, however, beneath the process of truth-seeking and the endless disagreements as to what's real and what isn't. This is fact that there are levels of understanding and varying degrees of human intelligence and capacity for logical thought. Seek and you will find is absolutely true, but what we find depends on the mental strength of the seeker, the relative power of seeking, and the purity of desire to find truth regardless of personal emotion and bias. Because of pre-existing notions and differences and the desire to discover truth, a single teaching leads people to very different conclusions. Likewise, human leaders beloved to their followers may be seen as totally negative by others. And who is right? And who knows which view is true? Perhaps you can't convince others of your beliefs, but you can trust what you determine to be true. Of course, in the field of metaphysics and spiritual reality beyond the physical senses, there is simply no proof, according to ordinary 3D mind, of this or that notion. So all humanity can share a unified understanding. There's no proof of cosmic plan or cosmic law, angels or soul, higher self or ET groups. Some people believe crop circles are the result of wind patterns or government technology or made by clever British jokers. Likewise, I can't prove anything to you either, but we can know truth for ourselves. This is called subjective knowing, the foundation of all spiritual awakening. Thus, trusting our capacity to know truth without proof is the root of seeking wisdom. I may consider a particular channel or teacher immature, distorted, and negatively oriented, i.e. controlling and violating free will, but their students may feel so happy to be in their group, and so it is. Here we must discover truth by ourselves, and the results of our discovery depend on strength of mind, willpower, and just how much we really love truth. When Ra was asked about the lack of proof in 3D life, our ignorance of self, other, life purpose, and all hidden truth whatsoever, they made a distinction between spiritual knowing and spiritual acceptance. While deep knowing is difficult, we can learn to accept experience as it is, without full understanding. Here's what they said in relation to knowing, accepting, and spiritual freedom. Ra says, "This 3D world is not a dimension of knowing, even subjectively, due to the lack of overview, veiling, of cosmic and other inpourings, which affect each and every situation which produces catalyst. The subjective acceptance of that which is at the moment and the finding of love within that moment is the greater freedom. That known as the subjective knowing without proof is, in some degree, a poor friend, for there will be anomalies no matter how much information is garnered due to the distortions which form third density." Session 61. And thus, subjective knowing without proof is a poor friend, whom we can't always trust due to 3D mind limitations and personal bias. Unconditional acceptance of that which is at the moment is more reliable and stable, and the finding of love within that moment offers a greater freedom than depending wholly on the mind. No doubt, it's nearly impossible to know anything fully with 3D mind. An opening heart to love and unconditional acceptance is often the only way to make peace with painful experience. Nevertheless, living unconditional acceptance isn't the end of personal evolution. Just loving the moment is insufficient for making certain decisions, particularly those needing discernment and careful thought. Just feeling good isn't always enough to decide what's best for us. Children may feel good eating candy all day long until they get sick and nauseous. Wanderers may feel good in a cult or New Age group until they realize the leader is negative and self-serving. Citizens may feel good their candidate was elected president until they realize he's a liar. While I totally support trial and error learning, having wisdom and clear mind at the start saves a lot of heartache later on. And so, although subjective knowing is often unstable, absolute truth is quite available. As Ross said, the strength of inner light, soul awareness in 3D form, depends on the strength of our seeking that light. And it's the same with truth. The strength and durability of inner knowing and clear awareness of truth depends on the intensity of our longing for truth. What you love, you shall experience, and what you deeply long for, you will become. If you think you have a weak mind and are very confused, please don't worry. Mind can be changed, awareness can grow, and truth can be known more and more. Deep understanding is not natural to 3D mind, but understanding will grow by continued seeking. Dearly loving truth is nothing less than dearly loving God, creator creation as it is. Seekers of light, whose essence is light, whose home and destination is infinite light, should certainly not follow false leaders, phony speakers, deluded channels, and deceptive political puppets. It is far better to trust yourself and to be your own leader. Loving love, we love all and taste joy. Loving wisdom, we see truth and remain knowing. Knowing well, we live at ease and become simple again. May we all seek truth and live in peace and truth beyond thought. Scott Mandelker, Ph.D., April 4th, 2010.